Well, hello everybody and welcome to Chef's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make some caramel sandwich biscuits. I'm going to call them caramel dodgers because they're going to be similar to what we over in the UK know as jammy dodgers, which is 2 layers of biscuit or cookie, and the jammy dodgers have some jam in the centre, and there's a hole in the middle of the top cookie so that the jam can be seen through that hole. And I'm going to do the same with these, but I'm going to use caramel instead. And for the biscuit I'm going to make a shortbread type biscuit, and then we'll chill that, roll it out and such like, and then we'll make some caramel which will be soft enough to spoon onto the biscuit but should set firmer once we've spooned it. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for the biscuit or the cookie dough, very simple. I have 300 grams, which is 2 cups of plain flour. That's based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 227 grams, 2 sticks of cold unsalted butter, and I've cubed that. Then I have 75 grams, half a cup plus 1.5 tablespoons of icing sugar. And then for the caramel, I have 100 grams of caster sugar, that's half a cup. I have 80 millilitres, 1/3 of a cup of double cream or heavy cream. 30 grams, just over 2 tablespoons of butter, a pinch of salt and half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I'll put those to the side for the time being, and we'll go on to make the biscuit dough. And I'm going to do that in the bowl of my immersion blender, and I'm going to put the flour and the icing sugar in, and then I'm just going to pulse that a couple of times to get those 2 ingredients combined. And that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to put my butter in, and I'm just going to make sure there's a little bit of flour coating the cubes of butter, just to try to prevent it from sticking to the sides as I process it. And as I process it, if the butter does stick to the sides, I will simply stop and scrape the sides down a little bit. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to process these until it turns into fine breadcrumbs, and then I'll keep processing until it actually starts to clump together and to form into a dough. So that's beginning to clump together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into a bowl so that I can squeeze it between my hands and form it into a dough. So that butter is nicely incorporated now, and it will work easily into a dough just by squeezing it like that. And then I'm going to put that into some plastic wrap so that we can chill it in the fridge. So I'm going to form it into a disc. Like that. And I'm going to put that into the fridge, and I'm going to chill it for an hour. And after an hour, I'll come back and we'll roll it out, ready to bake the biscuits, and then we'll make the caramel. So I've chilled the dough for about an hour, and I've divided it in half so that I can work with just half of it for the time being. And I've put it onto a floured work surface, and I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on the top as well. I'm going to roll it out to a thickness of about 5 millimeters, about 1/4 of an inch. And if it cracks, it doesn't matter. So I've rolled that out, and as you can see, I haven't bothered with the shape at all because we're cutting it out. And I have here a cookie cutter, which is about 2.5 inches in diameter, 7 centimeters. And I'm simply going to cut out shapes like that with a scalloped edge and put them onto my baking tray. So with that dough rolled out, I have 24 cutouts there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hole in the middle of each, in the middle of half of them, because they will become the tops. So this will be the bottoms and this will be the tops. And for that, I'm going to use something like this, which is simply the top of the spray for my lens cleaner, and I've simply sterilise that with some white vinegar basically, and I'm going to put it into the centre, dip it in some flour first, but put it into the centre of the dough and just press down and cut out like that. And I'm going to retain the little bits because I'll add those later to the other dough. And if you have something like this, which is sort of shaped, you can use that as well. And with those cut out, I'm going to put those into the fridge, and I'm going to chill them while I preheat my oven to 180 Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And when it's come to temperature, I'm going to put these into the oven and bake them for between 10 and 12 minutes. They should bake nicely and just begin to colour very slightly. Then I take them out of the oven and transfer them, leave them for a couple of minutes to firm up, then transfer them to a wire rack to cool completely. I'll bake off the rest of the dough as well, and then we'll make our caramel. So the biscuits have baked and they're cooling down, and I'm going to go on to make the caramel. And for that, I'm going to put my 100 grams of sugar into a saucepan, and then I'm going to put that on the heat, on a fairly gentle heat, and I'm going to leave it, just giving it a little shake from time to time until it completely dissolves and it starts to bubble, meaning that it's coming up to sort of a boiling point. And at that stage, we're going to add in the cream and do that a bit at a time, stirring it. And I'll show you that process now. So I'm going to turn the heat on, and this is on a small gas ring, and I'm going to just turn it down to a fairly moderate heat. And I'm just going to be patient with this. It will take a while for it to heat up, and then as it gets hot enough, the sugar will start to dissolve. But we don't need to stir. If you stir it, it's likely to crystallize. So the only thing I might do is give it a shake like this from time to time. And as I shake this saucepan, you can see that the sugar is beginning to melt on the bottom. And now it's melting because the sugar slides from side to side. So as you can see, that's now just starting to bubble. So what I'm going to do, a little bit at a time, I'm going to pour my cream in. But as I pour the cream in, I'm going to whisk it because it's going to froth up. But I only want a little bit at a time. Because as you see, it froths up. Then I'll add a little bit more. And a little bit more. And more. And the remainder. I'm going to stir that around. And I'm actually going to cook that for 2 minutes. So it's been 2 minutes. I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to put my butter in. And be very careful. This is very, very hot. If you get any of that on you, it will give you a severe burn. I'm going to stir the butter in until it's fully incorporated. And as I do that, I'm going to pour in my half a teaspoon of vanilla extract and my pinch of salt. That's it, like that. I want to stir to make sure that all that butter is fully incorporated. Some of it may leach out as it cools down a little bit, but if you just simply whisk it again, it will go back in, and as it cools down, it will incorporate fully. So with that, like that, I'm going to put that into a container and leave it to cool until it's good enough or cool enough that I can put it onto the biscuits. So I'll tip my caramel into this little bowl, and I'm going to leave that until it cools down, and it will begin to thicken. And when it's thickened sufficiently, I will come back and we'll put some caramel on the base of the biscuits and then put the other ones on top. I've allowed the caramel to cool down, and it's still runny. It's going to set firmer than that as it cools even more. But what I've done is I've taken 12 of the biscuits bases and 12 of the tops, and I'm going to put the caramel on these 12 bases and put the tops on the top. And I could do the same with the other 12, but what I've decided to do is to use a little bit of jam, which I have boiled for about a minute, to make it slightly more sticky than it would be if it was in straight out of the jar. But I'll show you this caramel one. So I'm going to take maybe up to half a teaspoon, maybe more. You can put as much or as little as you want on these bases, but you don't want it to roll over the edge. So with that amount on, I'm simply going to take another biscuit and place it on the top and just press it down sufficiently that the hole in the middle, is filled nicely. And I'm just going to leave that to set completely and do the same with the remainder. And with them filled like that, these are the two which I made with the top of my spray bottle, and these I used a little cutout for, like this, but you can do whatever you want really. So these are the caramel ones, and behind them I have my jam ones, but it's the caramel ones that I'm focusing on. So I'm going to leave those for the caramel to set firmer and stick the two biscuits firmly together, and then once that's happened, I'll come back and we'll have a taste. So I've let the biscuits set up now with the fillings in them, and I'll have a taste of one. I mean, they look quite good, so I'll have a taste of the caramel one, since that is the recipe I said I was doing. Biscuit is that lovely soft, almost melt in the mouth texture, shortbready, and then you get the hit of the caramel as well. How much of the caramel you use is up to you. I've only used about half a teaspoon of the caramel and about a quarter of the teaspoon of jam on mine, but you could use more if you wanted to. So that's very, very good indeed. I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link for it below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.